Tripsdrill, located in Kleebron, Germany, is one of the most unique parks I've ever been to. I've heard about this park for years, and with its unique lineup of rides and attractions, along with its natural beauty, it's a park I've wanted to visit for years to come, and I was finally able to do that. So, follow along with me throughout my day here at this unique park in this episode of TPH Europe. We kicked off our day walking through the iconic entranceway and starting it in the best way possible, by riding the park's Skitty coaster. Rossender Tassenfubler is a Sierra Tivoli model. This is a fairly common model, especially in Europe. This one, however, had some terrain action with just some incredible landscaping surrounding the ride. Probably the best one of these I've ever done.
Well, you can never go wrong with the Tivoli, and that one was so fun. The terrain was so well done on it. It was like pathed beautifully. That was one of the most gorgeous kids coasters I've ever ridden.
After we walked towards the back area of the park where most of the rides you come for Tripsdrill for are located. This park is really split up into 3 sections. One area with all your thrill rides and another area where your newer rides are going to be found. And right in between the two are a ton of family rides and restaurants to choose from. It's honestly split, and that's really refreshing to see. This area, however, was one of my favorite sections of any theme park I've ever visited, solely because of the beauty in this area. A large grassy field is just surrounded by large roller coasters, and behind these roller coasters are some gorgeous mountains and German architecture. I could have just sat here for hours, it was so gorgeous. When we got over here, we started with Saw, the park's Gerschlauer Wild Mouse, or bobsled model as they call it. This ride, however, is quite significant because it was the first ever Gerschlauer coaster ever made. So this is the ride that started it all for this manufacturer. And they have gone on to create some of the greatest roller coasters in the entire world. This is the queue for like the Wild Mouse.
Yeah, but why? It's crazy.
What on earth?
It's a bobsled. Different.
It's so bobsled still. Oh, that's terrifying. While this ride is not the most thrilling, its interaction with the buildings and the way it follows the terrain is something unlike any of these. These little floater hills flow so well with the terrain, and it is just as fun on ride as it is to watch off ride. This is one of the most beautiful coasters I've ever seen.
Well, it's not every day you ride the first ever Gerschlauer, but that was really cool. I remember we rode something that was a clone back at Jewel Summerland last year, but that one is so much better. This terrain is beautiful, it flows so well, it's just so cool. And obviously, it's the first ever Gerschlauer, it's a big part of history. This whole park, everything's so well made. This is by far probably the most beautiful park I've ever been to.
Next, we walked over to Mamut, the park's wooden coaster, and it is also in fact the only wooden coaster designed and built by Gerschlauer. So the layout is unlike anything you've ever really seen on other wooden coasters. While this ride isn't the best, it's not the smoothest, and it doesn't really have any airtime or forces, I did enjoy the show scenes at the start, and I did appreciate how different this coaster was from other wooden coasters.
Mamut right there is one of the weirdest, but honestly kind of fun wooden coaster I've ever ridden. It's not that smooth, but it has a fun twisty layout. I kind of liked it. I know a lot of people don't enjoy this ride. I think it's a little weird. I will agree. It's a very odd ride. I see why it's Gerschlauers only. They definitely don't need to be in that market, but it's still a really cool ride and definitely an odd wooden coaster.
Now it was time for Karacha, the park's Gerschlauer Infinity Coaster. I personally think the Infinity Coaster model is one of the most underrated roller coaster models out there. Every single one of these I've done have blown me away, and this one is no exception. The pre-section with the barrel roll is always fun, and that launch is super snappy. The ride's airtime is lethal, especially on that top hat, and I love the grand finale to this ride. It's just a super snappy dive loop immediately followed by a corkscrew. The ride was just a blast.
Karacha was my most anticipated ride coming into this park, and that lived up to all expectations. That was incredible. The little roll at the start was so fun. The launch has an insane kick. It has everything you want, and it's a perfect little compact family coaster. I'm blown away that there's not more of those little Gerschlauer Infinities in America or in the world. It didn't have any gimmick to it. It wasn't anything special. It was just a fun little roller coaster. I loved it.
After this, we then ventured over to the other side of the park to ride the other 2 roller coasters, starting with Voldampf. This Vekoma family boomerang model is a ton of fun, as it sometimes can duel with the invert right above it. Plus, the little steam effect at the start I love, and this is definitely one of the better family boomerangs out there.
I've always adored these Vekoma family boomerangs, and that one's still so fun. I love that it goes through the station of Haus Uberoff. Such a cool effect. Just a great family coaster. I'm so glad they're coming to more parks finally in America.
Finally, it was now time for Haus Uberoff, or Head Over Heels in English. This, as of now, is the only Vekoma suspended thrill coaster in operation. And wow, this is easily one of the best inverts ever created. For a prototype ride, it runs phenomenally. The restraint is so minimal, which really allows you to feel like you are flying. It is also one of the smoothest coasters I've ever ridden. This ride has it all. Some inversions are graceful, some are quite snappy, there are some intense moments throughout the ride too, and it also catches you off guard with some airtime pops, which is almost impossible to find on any inverted coaster. It's quite possibly the best invert ever created. I personally would prefer for parks to invest in this style of invert rather than the B&M counterparts.
Haus Uberoff, that was by far one of the greatest inverts I've ever ridden. That had airtime, it had forces that I just never experienced on an invert. The lap bar was so different, so unique. It was so much fun. That was the most fun I've ever had on an inverted coaster. It was great.
Now that all the coasters were complete, there were two more rides I wanted to check out, starting with this bizarre drop tower manufactured by S&S. It's a dual family tower powered by a cable that starts off like your average family drop tower, but before the final drop, the whole ride vehicle violently jolts forward to make you feel like you're about to fall off the ride. And that little tilt is super violent. It genuinely scared the crap out of me on my first ride. Finally, we ventured toward the other side of the park once more to ride the park's log flume. This is one of the best log flumes I've done. First off, you sit in the bathtub and it even has a fake shower head on the back. This is by far the best ride vehicle I've ever seen, hands down. This flume also features 3 drops, including the likes of a backwards drop, and the indoor section is well themed. Just get ready to, well, see some things. The massive drop at the end is a lot of fun too, and the way the flume is built into that tower is just gorgeous.
Well, that was probably the weirdest log flume I've ever ridden. The drop was fun, the backward section was great, but yeah, there was just that indoor section had a lot of boobies.
Overall, Tripsdrill is just such an incredible park, and it blew my expectations out of the water. It had great theming, a great lineup of roller coasters and attractions. My only real wish was that this park had a dark ride, and maybe one more standout coaster would fill this park's lineup perfectly. Plus, this park had some incredible food, friendly staff. It was overall just such a good time. So if you're ever in the Stuttgart or Frankfurt area, I would strongly recommend driving just a little extra to come visit this gorgeous park.
Tripsdrill as a whole is just such a beautiful park. It's gorgeous. It's the perfect family park. I was saying it's the perfect park to grow up at. I feel like from when you're a 2-year-old all the way up to 12-year-old, it has every single ride you could want, just growing up, facing your fears more and more. That's one of the best parks I've ever been to. So that's gonna do it here from Tripsdrill. We'll see you tomorrow at Holiday Park. And don't forget to follow the thrill.